Gloucestershire. The reason? Marksmen have failed to shoot enough badgers. It's part of efforts to tackle bovine tuberculosis, which they can spread to cattle. The 6-week cull in West Somerset ended 2 days ago. In West Gloucestershire, it started late, so was due to end next Monday. Our Somerset correspondent, Clinton Rogers, has been gauging reaction to today's news and joins us now from the Quantocks. Clinton.
Alex, thanks very much indeed. Yes, we are pretty much in the centre of the Cull zone here, and this particular part of West Somerset has been in the middle of the national media spotlight on and off for the last 6 weeks as the various factions have argued, indeed squared up to one another on the issue of whether killing badgers is the way to tackle TB in cattle. But what a lot of people had thought was that as the cull came to an end this week, the guns would fall silent and maybe the arguments would quieten down too. How wrong we were. It seems the cull is set to continue, and the arguments, well, they're as loud as ever. At Camp Badger in Somerset, today's news was greeted with a mixture of anger and dismay.
None of us are surprised.
Protesters accusing the government of cynically manipulating the figures to disguise a gross failure of the trial.
It's obviously been a failure, and the government really ought to stand up and say that it's been a failure. It's not worked, but instead they're changing the goalposts so that they can make it look like it has worked.
The badgers have moved the goalposts. You're dealing with a wild animal. It's a wild animal subject to the vagaries of weather and disease and breeding patterns.
The data is certainly confusing. In Somerset, the aim was to cull 2,100 badgers, 70% of the population, but we hear now only 850 have been killed. Why? Well, it seems the original estimate of the badger population of Somerset was simply too high. So that's now been revised downwards from 2,400 to 1,450. Now that 70% target looks more achievable. And the National Farmers Union locally says, for the whole future of farming, Deborah's cull has to be given time to succeed.
They've overturned 20 years of political procrastination and inactivity, which has led us to the chronic situation we're in now, with 38,000 cattle slaughtered last year, a disease out of control, and the danger of Europe making us into some sort of isolation zone and effectively shutting down farming, which is, of course, what a lot of the anti-cull campaigners actually want.
But one farmer in Gloucestershire whose herd has been affected by TB says he's not surprised the shooting hasn't worked.
It's ridiculous to state now that because we failed to actually kill the requisite number in the time period that we were supposed to kill, that it's down purely to somebody in Natural England getting the numbers wrong.
Whether this nighttime cull is now in disarray clearly depends on which side of the fence you sit. But whatever the argument, it is now likely that an extension of up to 3 weeks will be granted for the shooting in both Somerset and Gloucestershire. What is clear is that for as long as the shooting does go on, both here and in Gloucestershire, the protesters will stay and do what they can to disrupt the marksmen. Clinton Rogers, BBC Points West in Somerset.
Well, with me in the studio is our political editor, Paul Baltrop. Paul, a lot to talk about. Let's take it stage by stage. First of all, it's been a big challenge for the police who saw the operation there. What do they say?
Well, it's been really, really big for them. They've had to devote a lot of time, a lot of manpower to it. Scores of officers going out, trying to keep the peace between the marksmen and protesters on the streets and in the fields of West Gloucestershire and West Somerset every night. Before it all started, there was an estimate that it would cost the forces each year £1 million. Now, that is absolutely certain to rise substantially. And today we've heard from the Police and Crime Commissioner for Gloucestershire. His name's Martin Searle, and he says that the cull should not be extended.
I'm disappointed they're considering an extension to the cull. It's not what Gloucestershire needs. The police have been involved in an intense operation for the last 5 weeks. The protesters, I think, may become irritated or infuriated by the change of plan. And I'm seeing evidence that the colours are getting somewhat desperate to meet their targets. That's not a good combination for peace in the county.
Well, earlier we heard the Minister appearing to blame the badgers for moving the goalposts. But what do the other politicians say about this?
Well, the government have been trying to put their best foot forward. They've come in for a lot of criticism, both outside and inside the House of Commons. Kerry McCarthy raised the subject. She was demanding that the minister come to the House to make a statement today. Not today, though. He's going to have to go there tomorrow to explain what's going on. Now, he will find there's growing doubts amongst many government MPs. I talked to one Somerset Liberal Democrat, Paterson, who said what's going on at the moment is crackers. What everyone is especially concerned about is the science, and today we've heard of it from some of those involved with the last big culling trial here in the West Country that took place 10 years ago. They've spoken out and expressed concern that extending the cull could actually make things worse and spread TB amongst cattle.
Well, simply that it will lead to greater perturbation, dispersal of badgers and worsening of the disease situation. We know that when badgers disperse, the TB in the badger increases because of increased badger contact and increased badger cattle contact, and it also leads to an increase in the disease in cattle.
Well, the government's applying, isn't it, for an extension? Presumably it's applying to itself because it wants to do it anyway. But how likely is this cull to be extended now?
Almost certain. I don't think there's any doubt. I've talked to Natural England, who are the government agency who look after the licences. They reckon it could be sorted by the weekend, and then we could see the cull going on for several weeks to come.
Okay, cool. You'll keep us posted, won't you? Thank you.
A man who took